How much do F1 drivers earn? Well, that's pretty tightly held information, and no two drivers are on exactly the same type of deal. Some may be getting a salary plus bonuses. Others may take a cut of the sponsorship that they bring to a team. One thing's for sure, they're very well paid for a job they probably do for nothing. So let's get started, thanks to Canity.com. F1 drivers are rated the best drivers in the world. They risk their lives every time they go out on track. So let's have a look at how they're paid and how much they're paid. Well, some are on a straight salary, others might be on salary plus bonuses. For instance, if you got a point, you might get $20,000 a point. If you have a win, it could be €1 million for that particular win. Now, obviously, someone like a Lewis Hamilton, who is expected to win and earn a lot of points, perhaps doesn't have that same level of bonus involved in his salary. Someone at the bottom end would have plenty of bonuses on offer, but is probably unlikely to attain many of them. On top of that, drivers would negotiate rights to their images, so that when a team sponsor uses the likes of a Max Verstappen or a Valtteri Bottas in a campaign, there'll already be a factor in there taken into account for the image rights. Some drivers will include X number of posts to their social media audience that's included in their salary. And some of those could be worth $50,000 to $100,000 in the case of, say, a Lewis Hamilton or a Daniel Ricciardo. So let's get down to brass tacks. How much does an F1 driver earn? One thing's for certain, no team principal is going to come out and tell you or me how much they pay their driver. However, team principals will gladly speculate on what other drivers are being paid at other teams. So I went to Dieter Renken, highly regarded in the F1 journalistic paddock. He runs racefans.net, and here's his rundown of the salaries for the 2020 season. Number one, Lewis Hamilton on $40 million, and we're talking US dollars all the way through here. Next up, Sebastian Vettel, $30 million. Max Verstappen, $25 million. Daniel Ricciardo, $20 million. And Charles Leclerc, $10 million. So that's the top five, all earning $10 million or more. Carlos Sainz is next on $8 million, as is Bottas, as is Perez. Romain Grosjean, well, it's estimated he's earning $7 million for his drive at Haas, and Kimi Räikkönen, $5 million, Kevin Magnussen, $5 million, along with Esteban Ocon. The next rung down is Lance Stroll on $3 million, Alex Albon, $2.5 million, Lando Norris, $2 million, Daniil Kvyat, $2 million, along with Pierre Gasly, $2 million. And of course, he's just signed a new contract with AlphaTauri, and you can expect next year that figure should go up. And at the tail end of the field, three drivers on around $1 million: Antonio Giovinazzi, George Russell, and Nicholas Latifi. Now, those figures were published at the start of the season. Then, of course, COVID hit. So are all the drivers drawing that same salary? They are not. Bear in mind that the F1 teams have seen their income being reduced anywhere from 40 to 60% this year. Of course, their sponsorship revenue would be down, their merchandise sales would be down. They've copped a big hit, and as such, most, if not all of the drivers have taken a pay cut this year. So let's go back to these figures here though and assume it wasn't a COVID year. Would all of the drivers keep all of that money? No, there are some costs that come out of those figures straight off the top. Let's have a look at what they are. A manager. Most of the drivers will have a management team, and they're probably paying 10 to 15, maybe even 20% of their income to a manager to look after their fares. Now, someone like Daniel Ricciardo never had a manager in the early years because Red Bull managed him, so he wouldn't have had to have taken out that chop for a management fee on top. Some of them pay for a trainer out of that money. Someone like a Romain Grosjean employs his trainer, Kim Keedle, directly, so Kim answers only to Romain, whereas a Red Bull driver gets a trainer allocated to them by the team, so they don't have to budget for the trainer. However, that trainer effectively answers to Red Bull but works with the driver. So that's perhaps not quite as an ideal situation for a driver if you've got someone who's answering to another employer. Some drivers choose to pay for their own accommodation and travel and charge the team an allowance for that. But all this is negotiable. When you look at airfares too, someone like a Carlos Sainz, he lives right next to McLaren, so to do his sim work, he just has to get in the car and drive there. There's no extra costs involved, whereas if you're living in Monaco, yeah, you've got to fly to wherever your team's home base is, and that's going to be at a cost to someone. It's also worth pointing out this is not a cheap sport to get into. And to get to F1, you have to go through various levels of racing. So you're going to have to fork out, say, €300,000 in F4, 800,000 euros in F3 and probably €1.5 million to race a season in F2. Now, if you're a young driver, you haven't got that sort of money. So what a lot of them do is go out and get investors. And this is what happened with Charles Leclerc. He had Nicholas Todd, his manager, invest in him and pay all those fees up front. Now, at some point, Nicholas needs a return on his investment. So what they'll often do, and this happens certainly with Valtteri Bottas, is that the investors say, right, we'll pay for your racing up front, don't worry about that, but we'll have our return and perhaps take, I don't know, pick a figure, 30% of your income over the 10 years after you make it into F1. Now that's a bit like betting on a horse, although if you've got a good idea of talent, you could probably reduce your risks. Another way drivers can top up their earnings throughout the year is to take on a personal sponsor or two. Take a look at someone like Daniel Ricciardo and you'll see the car sales logo on his hat. That's a personal sponsor. And he will go to the team and say, look, I want to have this much space on my shirt, I want to have this much space on my helmet for my own personal sponsors. Look on Sergio Perez's helmet and you'll see the Shades logo. That's his sunglasses sponsor and he's negotiated space on the helmet to put that particular sponsor. And you'll find a lot of the drivers do have personal sponsors. Nico Hülkenberg had Decra as a sponsor for many years. And I used to always think, how does Nico get away with wearing that hat? Whereas all the other drivers are wearing the Renault hat or whatever team hat. That would have been worked into Nico's contract, that he's allowed to do that. And obviously that would mean that perhaps the team saves a bit of money because they don't get that exposure on Nico's hat and Nico can pick up a few extra dollars to add to his income. Typically, what will a company pay to sponsor a driver? Could be $10,000, could be $20 million. It all depends on what the package includes. I do know that if you're in business and want to sharpen up your staff's skills, head to Canity.com, the world's best online staff training platform. Hundreds of short, sharp training videos covering everything from handling angry customers to how to shine on video conferences. Canity.com. Now, people whinge about pay drivers. Oh, that driver shouldn't be there, it should be a better driver having his seat. Well, the unfortunate thing about this sport being so expensive to participate is that you have to bring money to the table or be with a wealthy team. Someone like a Mercedes-Benz with huge budgets, what is there, $400 million plus a year to run their team? Yeah, well maybe they don't have to worry about getting extra income in. They can just simply pick the best driver. Someone at the bottom end, a Williams or a Haas, they may have to take the money just to stay afloat. But one thing's for sure, pay drivers are on the rise. You look at this year, you've got Nicholas Latifi. His family runs Safina Foods. They're bringing a lot of money to Williams and they get that Plum sponsorship on the back wing. Now, that's interesting too, because I asked somebody doing some research this week, is that the most valuable piece of signage on the car? And they said, yeah, look, at most tracks, but somewhere like a Baku or a Monza, where the rear wing is open a fair bit of the time because of DRS, that becomes less attractive. And I never thought of that. Lance Stroll is another example of a pay driver. Robert Kubica brought Orlan to the team. He managed to get himself a drive. And next year, I think you'll find, and by the way, I'm recording this late October, Nikita Mazepin may end up at Haas, and his family is going to bring a lot of money to that team. But if you're against pay drivers, think about this. Niki Lauda, he was a pay driver, as was Michael Schumacher, and even Fernando Alonso. Three huge names that wouldn't have made it into F1 unless they brought with them some money to get into the sport. And unfortunately today, it's going to be inevitable. The drivers, yes, they're going to have to be good drivers, but they have to be great PR people. They have to go out and sell themselves, and they have to go to companies and say, hey, can you invest some money in me so that I can get a drive and help plug your products? I should also say that the social media side of things is a very powerful factor. If Tommy Hilfiger puts a post up on Lewis's Instagram and pays, I don't know, $100,000, they would expect great response from that. And now more and more companies are saying, right, well, you've got 1 million followers, I want access to that audience. And they're happy to build in a dollar value to access that particular audience. And that's where things 10 years ago were nothing like this. So the drivers have these other avenues to make money. And when you have a look at it, the top 5 drivers earn about 2/3 of the total salary pool per year. The other 15 have to fight it out for 1/3. And they're risking their lives every time they go out on track. And their careers aren't that long. Yes, you'll get a Lewis who'll be in there a long time and a Vettel, but for most of them, it's not any more than a few years. If you've liked this video, and I hope you have, please hit the like button and the subscribe button if you haven't done so. The bell button gets you notifications, and I'd love you to join my channel for exclusive content, wallpapers and extras. All my digital images are available at prostarpics.com. You'll find photo books, blogs and podcasts at kimillman.com, and for my best images throughout the week, head to Instagram at kimillman. Thanks for watching and stay passionate. Bloody shirt looks white on camera. It's actually pink.